Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Devin.
And today we are doing a Play This Not That of Seven Wonders versus Seven Wonders Duel. Devin, you've been hearing me give the whole Play This Not That spiel for a while. You want to go ahead and take a crack at it?
Yeah, so Play This Not That is 2 games and we talk about them. Is that was holistically what you wanted me to get?
No, not remotely close.
So Play This Not That is not necessarily a exclusionary comparison where we talk about only one of these games that we like. It could be play this and play that. It could be play this more than that. It could be I like both of these, but I pretty much only play this. It can really go both ways.
It could also be neither of these games are worth your attention at all. Although I don't think I've actually done that yet, but I probably should.
Why would you and I do that?
Well, because if you're comparing 2 games, the point is to compare 2 games.
I know, but like you and I just don't typically want to waste time talking about games that we don't like.
I'd rather tell you I love this game and not that game than be like, they both suck. Go play a video game or something.
Just seems like unnecessary.
So the whole explanation of that is generally I get a comment or two from people be like, why would you say play this not that? Don't tell me what not to play. And usually
It's
my
a
answer
catchy
is
title.
It's a catchy title.
It's a catchy title.
Do you know what the inspiration for it is?
What?
There's a book series called Eat This, Not That.
Oh, really?
It's a diet book series where you're like, instead of eating this bread, eat the lettuce and it's fewer calories, and also you remove your joy of life and all that. But, anyways. I read a thing once.
Has its purposes, okay?
I read a
like
thing
a really
once.
good lettuce wrap, like, oh, delicious.
Yeah. I read a thing about how, like, if you replace your morning latte with green tea, you'll absolutely get rid of about 400 calories a day and your will to live. It's good stuff. Good stuff. Anyways, Play This Not That. Seven Wonders versus Seven Wonders Duel. We are going to be comparing these games. We're going to be talking about our experiences with both these games. We're going to be telling you why these games are comparable, then comparing a whole bunch of price points, a whole bunch of points about the game, and then following that up with ultimately what is our personal opinion. Is it play this and that? Play this more than that? Is it situational? How many 14 different caveats can we throw in there so that the opinion is ultimately meaningless but possibly helpful at the same time? And this is Seven Wonders versus Seven Wonders Duel, which offhand the first question, as usual, is why are these games worth comparing?
Why are these games worth comparing? Well, even though this shifts from a large group setting, simultaneous drafting game to a more layered solitaire selection game, this is a 2-player game only, and this is... Can this play as low as 2?
So I don't believe the new edition. The new edition is 3 to 7.
Okay.
The original edition was 2 to 7 and had a 2-player module.
Okay.
And I think they're like, we have Seven Wonders Duel now. We don't need that garbage anymore.
So they definitely don't overlap at all in terms of player count, technically, with this version of the game.
It's a good starting point to why they're worth comparing. You literally can't play these with the same people.
You know how we have that thing with Meg where she says something but then doesn't lead into a but? So I was about...
I know. Always.
So, Seven Wonders Duel, despite having the lack of overlap in player count, takes its world, its like overall structure of cards, and how all of the different elements that are there. They're derived from Seven Wonders. Now, how they interact with each other is usually different on almost all counts, but everything that it has is taken from this original game.
Yeah, which is a good time to do a general, just high-level overview of these games. Seven Wonders is a drafting game for 3 to 7 players in which you're going to be drafting these cards. There's going to be 7 types of cards, at least until you add expansions. And when you do those cards, you're taking those cards and you're gathering resources and science and marketplace cards and these blue point scoring cards and these guilds. You're gathering different types of cards, 7 different types of cards with different focuses on them in order to build out the best civilization across 3 rounds of play. At this point, and you're going to have your wonder boards where you're going to be able to also build out your wonders. Seven Wonders Duel, on the other hand, is a drafting game, except it's not drafting cards in the typical drafting sense. Rather, you are drafting from an open tableau where players are going to alternate. 2 players only are going to alternate taking cards from a tableau of face-up and face-down cards. There are also going to be the 7 types of cards. There's also going to be military. There's also going to be science. There's also going to be wonders that you build. There's also going to be coins and points and all, and technology. So, like you said, it has the same overarching components and structure. The differences primarily are going to be the player count focus, and then the way you draft cards from a tableau of cards on the table versus drafting from your hand, and then small nuanced details as far as how things operate. So, for instance, in Seven Wonders Core, military is a point scoring method. In Seven Wonders Duel, it is points, but it also can lead to an immediate defeat. Similarly with technology, same aspect. In Seven Wonders, it is just a version of points. In Seven Wonders Duel, it could be points, or it could be I immediately defeat you. So there are nuanced differences between the two games, but the core structure, components, elements, and even artwork to a degree are implemented in both. These games are worth comparing, despite the fact that they have no actual overlap in the player count, which is a distinction we will definitely talk about now and later as well. From there, let's go into price. Now, this time I actually looked it up first, because I thought that was like...
Is this one cheaper?
That one's definitely cheaper. But how much cheaper? Guess. Let's go guessing.
I would say that this is...
Prices for Miniature Market? No, we're not sponsored. Yes, we're willing to be sponsored. Miniature Market? Give me a call.
I would say that this is 25 to 30.
Okay.
And I would say that this is 35 to 40.
So you're right on one of those. That is $27.99, and this is $47.99.
Wow.
Nearly double the price.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought that base game is 50.
The expansion, Seven Wonders Leaders, is $27.99, which is the price point of Seven Wonders Duel.
Just the Leaders module?
Yep.
Is the same price as the whole game?
Yeah. Impressive, right? So, offhand, off the bat...
Not the adjective I would use. Surprising, maybe.
Off the bat, Seven Wonders is going to be nearly double the price point of Seven Wonders Duel. The good news is, if you're playing with 7 people, you can split that cost 7 ways. No one's ever done that, but hypothetically, you could.
Can you Venmo me for the
Can
cost?
you Venmo me for the cost? Hey, thanks for coming over, Travis. Can you go ahead and send me $2 for your gameplay session? If you keep coming over, the price will lower to $185 next session. Thank you. I love you. You're my best friend.
Venmo, not a sponsor. Willing to be. Venmo, give us a call.
Anyways, so that's Seven Wonders versus Seven Wonders Duel on price point. Different price points, different player counts, different components.
Yeah.
I am surprised at the difference. I'm with you on this.
Yeah.
I think this should be more expensive, but like $10 more expensive.
Oh! I thought you meant than it was.
Then it was.
No.
Yeah, and that's what we have as far as price point. Moving on to ease of learning and teach. You want to take this one or start off?
Sure. So I think that at the end of the day, this is probably an easier game to teach and to learn how to play, because with a simultaneous drafting game, you can, in theory, when you're playing it or when you're teaching it, talk about not worrying at all what the person to your left or what the person to your right is doing, and just focus on understanding the mechanics of the game and how the cards interact with each other. They're, the gold cards that reduce cost of getting resources, the green cards that layer up and grow in points, not exponentially really, but just they grow in size the more you get, and then guild cards that work in the third age based off of what you go, placing cards in, nuking them to be able to build wonders. I think this is easier because it can technically be played in isolation, even though you are simultaneously drafting with other people around the table. You're doing a lot of the same things in this. You're taking cards and you're building somewhat of the same structure of all the different 7 types of cards. However, in here, there is the added nuance of you really want to be focusing on making sure that anything you do does not set up your opponent to take something, or that you could also simultaneously take something that benefits you and, robs your opponent of something that they value. And it is much more aggressive into the making sure you're aware of what your opponent is doing. Whereas this, if you're playing with 7 people, the only people that really matter at all are the people to your left and right. Yeah. Maybe you think you could affect someone who's further away from you.
Twice as many people that you're worrying about in Seven Wonders Duel.
Yeah. Double the amount. So it does have the interplay of more players, but it also can operate without as much of a kind of like vicious focus on your opponent, and this is a much more brutal experience.
Yeah. For me, I don't have a strong opinion on which one is better as far as the ease of learning and teach. I did walk in knowing Seven Wonders for years before I picked up Seven Wonders Duel, which is both a pro and a con. It meant I knew the structure more, so it was easier to dive into that one, but also meant that I viewed the things that are different as differences and not the original. I think they're mostly similar as far as their general accessibility, as far as both learning the game and teaching the game. I think there are small potential differences, like for instance the immediate victory conditions might be a small aspect. I think there's small, like instinctively I'm kind of with you, there's small nuanced aspects that are a little more complex about Seven Wonders Duel. Again, I'm walking with the bias of the order that I learned them in, and I don't think there's that significant. So I think they're generally accessible.
And I don't think that those nuances are necessarily a barrier to play. I think they are a awareness for optimal play that you need to be mindful of.
Which brings us into art and components, a very complicated discussion of which one's better here.
Keep in mind that some of the stuff we have on the table are not the base components that you've got. These are, I have not played with these until I came to your house and played with you.
Some of my favorite
These
metal
are
coins.
probably, in my like top 5 favorite coins I've ever seen in terms of games. I love, some metal coins aren't specific to the game. This is specific to Seven Wonders, which I love, the 136. So those aren't really into the conversation. To make the size of the play experience better, you need smaller cards. I do like the bigger cards in Seven Wonders, so but it's not like enough of a detractor to make me like ding Seven Wonders Duel for it, but I do prefer the larger cards rather than the mini cards.
And that I'd likely hold true for the Wonder boards as well.
Yeah. This doesn't even have Wonder boards.
Yeah, we have giant Wonder boards as opposed to small Wonder cards.
Yes. So I think I actually prefer it here than this, just because.
Interesting.
I think that in a 2-player game, that because of the size of the cards, what you're building out in terms of your like engine. Yeah. You said you were gonna knock the boxes over.
I did say that.
I think that I don't mind how small these are, at least when I'm building out what I'm grabbing and building the different wonders. This is so large, but I understand that because it has to accommodate the entirety of your engine that you're building.
Also, you only have one Wonder in Seven Wonders versus you have multiple Wonders in Seven Wonders Duel. They couldn't be that large.
Yeah, you could have 3 or 4 Wonders at max in Duel. Even though it's a small element, I really do like this little miniature, this little plastic
You missed the fact I have a metal one of those?
You have a metal one of these?
I have a metal one of those.
You make me hate the components of my own games.
So, basically, as far as art and components for me, for the most part,
they're a wash, like, kind of.
It's the same general art structure. I agree with you primarily on the cards. I find, not just the cards, but even just the way they overlay. I do find that in Seven Wonders, I see the art a bit more. And in Seven Wonders Duel, I kind of tune it out a bit more just because of the way the cards are structured. So that's more, not even the size of the component, just seeing the art. But
that would be a positive of the Wonder Board, is because of how expansive it is, you get a very nice visual.
Yeah, so like my only real pro here would be that I think Seven Wonders, you see the art a bit more. Past that, I think it's a wash. It's the same basic art design, same basic component design. They're roughly comparable. I will say the Seven Wonders Duel cover is one of the best covers in board games, in my opinion. Just look at that thing.
It is a really good one.
Like, you stop seeing it because it's been around for so long, but like, that is a good cover. It just, it pulls you in. It makes you interested, intrigued, what's going on. It's a good cover.
Well, like, back to back makes you think of like an actual, like, duel with the guns.
Back to back, they faced off each other. Pulled out each,
it is a really, really sharp cover, right? And yeah, like, because I've owned it for a while, I don't think about it anymore.
Moving on to the next complete wash of a conversation, which theme do you prefer?
I mean, the theme is...
How much time are we going to waste on this joke?
To me, there is the nuance, though, of... Yes, it is a wash, but I think that the player count does create a...
Interesting.
Okay,
like, I'll take this.
I do think that the player count shifts it, because to me, this is more of a, like, direct competition of 2 civilizations that are trying to like vie with each other for supremacy, and this is much more like you're building your own, and does it happen to be better than everyone else?
I'll take it.
So
that's a reasonable distinction.
This wins for me, but it is a very like splitting hairs kind of.
Well, so the interesting thing is, within the distinction that you just brought to the table, which I do respect, this would win for me there. I like the sense of we're building our civilizations and we might have combat, as opposed to the thematic aspect of it's either me or you and one of us dies.
Yeah. To me, I'm like, this is like, Sparta versus Persia, or and then this is something else.
We're all growing and sometimes we fight each other. Yeah. Anyways, that's a theme and thematic difference there, which brings us to the largest section of the list, the largest conversation, which is generally about the mechanical differences.
Yep.
And again, as usual, just take a point, go back and forth, let's hash this out. What do you think about these games?
I think that the immediate win conditions in Seven Wonders Duel is a highlight for me, because it shifts the focus, it rewards selective drafting in a way that this doesn't until the end, and this does in an abrupt sense. Because in military combat here, you have a resolution at the end of every age.
Yes.
And you don't have that over here. You have immediate resolution of shifting this kind of tug of war. And I like this tug of war section because, you know, in these two sections here, nothing really happens. But when you break into these sections that have this kind of like shadowed overlay here, there are tiles here that are -2 and -5 coins. And so I like the idea that when I'm moving my military, I'm getting closer to an end state that could allow victory, but I'm also going to give myself, if I never get there, I'll give myself points at the end of the game. And then if I get into these two sections, and if I do that at a appropriate time, I can actually, you know, I leave my opponent bereft of coins because I immediately take away coins, which are a strong need in this, because in Seven Wonders Duel, you know, when you are developing a economy of goods, other people can benefit from them, and they can just pay you for them. But the more economy you create here, the more expensive you make it for an opponent to get in on that resource. And so I think that all of the elements in here are tied to, because of how the game functions with the technology, immediate win, if you get up to all of the icons, because of the military with the immediate win. I feel like all of the pieces of the game are a little bit more tied together and create a head-to-head experience, but it's because there is a connection there that is much more like agonizing in a drafting sense, rather than more of the kind of like, you know, like you said, we're building a civilization and we'll see who's better. And this is much more like, no, if my civilization is good, it's going to make yours not good.
And for me, I'll start off with that point. Even though I said thematically I prefer the we're all building our own civilization thing, mechanically I prefer the head-to-head of Seven Wonders Duel. The first one I'm going to give is Seven Wonders Duel. Everything about it is more just head-to-head. The aspect, you mentioned already, but those resources. I love the fact that when I gather a resource, not only have I taken the resource, I've made it more expensive for you.
Yeah.
You have to pay more for that. I love that sense over there. The immediate wins, again, that tension of the immediate possibility of a lost state. The card drafting, which we'll come back to, the way you acquire cards in the game, but this creates more of a head-to-head sense of every time I take a card, I'm potentially unlocking and opening. Even though drafting to me is one of the best mechanics, my favorite mechanic in games is drafting. But the way you have that head-to-head element of the card tableau in Seven Wonders Duel means that every time I take a card, I'm not just thinking about what I'm taking, I'm thinking about what am I opening, what am I unlocking, what abilities you're going to try to use. Even the sense of the fact that only one player can get 4 wonders, the other person can get 3. Again, it's a sense of competition. In regular Seven Wonders, I build my wonder when I want. In Seven Wonders Duel, if I can build my 4th wonder first, you can't build your 4th wonder.
Because there's not 8 wonders.
There's not 8 wonders. So again, you have that sense of head-to-headness of the game. I would say the overall head-to-head approach of Seven Wonders Duel, I prefer that extra level of tension compared to Seven Wonders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I definitely think that the drafting here is much more visceral. I like, in a way, how fast this plays. Now, I don't know if it's on there, and if it is, I just haven't played it.
It's on Board Game Arena.
It is.
Awesome.
I do think that a thing that is...
Fun fact, not only is it on Board Game Arena, it's been played a ridiculous amount of times.
Seven Wonders has?
Yeah.
Oh.
I have to find the stats in this, but like ever since just for I should find it. That's a very cool stat. But like when they added Seven Wonders to Board Game Arena, like the number of logged plays on Board Game Geek of Seven Wonders went from like X amount in this period to like 4 million plays over the next year or something like that. Oh wow! It was an insane stat.
That's crazy. That's crazy. I think that it is both a positive and a slight negative, because it makes the games really accessible to try out and really accessible to play. I mean, I haven't done Seven Wonders, but Seven Wonders Duel turns into like a 15-minute game on Board Game Arena because it does all of the card maintenance for you.
Yeah.
Now, the slight negative is if you've been playing a lot on Board Game Arena and then you sit down to table it, you're like, oh, I have to build this myself.
3 seconds. It's like shortest game.
It doesn't take 3 seconds. It's like Gloomhaven level.
18 seconds. My second aspect about the two is going to go towards that card aspect I talked about briefly. I prefer the head-to-head element of what the card tableau does in Seven Wonders Duel. Gives you that head-to-head element. I still love drafting as a mechanic. There's still, to me, there's just no difference when you're holding a hand of cards and you're like, there's 7 options on the table. Because when I play Seven Wonders Duel, there's never 7 options for me. there's always a handful of options. I'm like, there's these 2 cards I'm interested in, but this one might open that door for you. There's a smaller, more selective choice on the table. A hand of cards in Seven Wonders, or any drafting game for that matter, but in Seven Wonders, you're looking at your initial hand. Do you want that marketplace? Do you want to get that resource you need? Do you want to start building for science now? You can get that blue 3-point card off the bat for free, and it'll open a free chaining for the next card. You have those decisions off the bat, and I love just a handful of cards that not only are you able to make a choice, you're able to hand the other 6 choices to your opponent, and the sense of tension I get from drafting still remains to me just something you cannot compare with. Seven Wonders Duel, it's incredible, but it doesn't give me that hand of cards and the drafting element. The drafting for me is a win in Seven Wonders.
I will say, on the note of drafting, the element that is a win for me over here is the drafting of your wonders. Because that is something that you have 8 wonders that will be available for the 2 of you to split up, and you'll have one person pick 1, and then pick 2, and then the last person gets the leftover, and then you'll do that a second time, and you'll swap the order in 1 and 2 and 1. And so the order of like how you draft your 4 wonders, to me, directs a large part of the types of cards that you'll want to go after, because it will dictate the types of rewards that you're going to get. Are you going to try to chain this take another turn into getting a combat push? And especially taking another turn in Seven Wonders Duel is quite a strong move, because it could allow you to take, you always are taking a card in order to do that. So if you see a card and you're like, oh, but if I take that, I'll uncover another card that's really good for my opponent. If you combine that with a take another turn, you can take that and then you can deprive them of that, which is a really good element. And it also dictates the types of resources that you'll want to go after, because of the sense of if your opponent gets a resource of that type, it's more expensive for you. So if you have 2 of your 3 wonders have a lot of stone, you really need to prioritize finding stone to where it's not something that you have to spend
and
a ludicrous amount of money.
That you want the stone, and they might take the stone to make it more expensive, so you have to spend a ludicrous amount of money.
So whereas I think in Seven Wonders you typically are just dealt 2 wonders and you pick one of them. In this, there are 8 of them that you are deciding how will that direct your strategy moving forward. Because if you have heavy military, then that instant win condition might be more of a viable strategy for you. Or if you have, chaining a lot of coins together, you might really try to build up an engine to where you can always not have to worry about what resources you need to buy. And so it does have a lot of sense of import as to how it directs your focus moving from the drafting wonders into how you actually play through the ages. And I really do like that.
You can also play through the ages. Yeah,
I'm good.
As far as for me, another win in the Seven Wonders category is the science aspect. And this is an interesting one, because normally I choose powers and abilities above everything else.
Yeah.
But for me, Seven Wonders Duel, you collect science cards. When you collect 2 symbols, you get to take an ability tile. And Seven Wonders,
matching symbols.
2 matching symbols, you get an ability tile. And in Seven Wonders, you're creating this point structure where you get points for every different tile, and then the square of the number of the same type. So if you get 5 of the same symbol, that's 5 times 5, that's 25 points. And if you have a few other cards, you might get an additional 14 points. You can get like 3/4 of your score from science if you play this game right and you draft the right cards, while chaining into other cards you can access as well. I like it better. I have a greater sense of, when I talk about that hand of cards, I have a much stronger sense of I want to get everything. Because of the way science works, it gives me that constant tension and choice as far as how do I prioritize the game. Not just what I take, but I see you going for science. I have to be very wary of handing you a handful of science. There's a lot more choice around just the potential magnification of science. And in Seven Wonders Duel, I find that even though it adds powers and abilities, which I normally love, I just prefer the escalation and tension that the original base game gives.
And I think that's interesting to me, because one of the elements, another thing where Duel wins for me, is that in terms of drafting, I am frustrated by, and we played Terraforming Mars, and because there were just 3 of us, that didn't mind me. It didn't bother me as much when we were drafting. But in a huge game, there is a much larger group of people that I have no control over. Outside of the person to my left and right, who, as the ages, alternate and you're switching which one of those you're passing to, I can't do anything about players 4, 5, 6, and 7. They could, they could take stuff that I'm hoping to get. And so I like that you have more control over what you're getting or what your opponent's not getting in this, because it's just the 2 of you. So I think the ceiling of what you could accomplish in Seven Wonders, but I like the realism of what you know you can get in Duel.
Yeah, and heading off that too, that head-to-head aspect, I'll say, and I kind of touched upon this already in my first win for Seven Wonders Duel, but when it comes to the combat, I prefer Seven Wonders Duel. The combat in Seven Wonders feels just simply more abstracted. It feels like a choice of, hey, there's a potential 16 points on the table, or is it 16? It's 18 points. There's a potential 18 points on the table. There's
5, 5, 3, 3, 1, 1.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's the negative modifier, so it just becomes a math puzzle. If I can focus on this, or I can focus on the combat, you're already going heavy on combat, so that means even if I heavily lean into combat, I'm not really going to get the full 19 points or full 18 points, so at this point, it's just probably more efficient for me to go somewhere else. Combat in Seven Wonders,
the -3.
Yeah, combat in Seven Wonders feels like a math game. It feels like what is currently the best move based on how my opponents to my left and right are operating, and just where I think the points are going to fall in, versus combat in Seven Wonders Duel feels like, oh, your civilization isn't super cool. Also, you have no army, so you lose. Like, it feels more thematic, more meaningful. The combat feels like combat because, yes, there are points to be had, but also if you abandon it too much, you might straight up lose. There is that sense of fighting in Seven Wonders Duel that Seven Wonders does not have. It feels in Seven Wonders like an element of the game, and an element that has some thematic aspect because you're fighting your neighbors to your left and your right, but ultimately it comes down to a point puzzle. In Seven Wonders Duel, it's a point puzzle and instant death, and that's just much stronger.
Yeah, for sure.
Anything else? I have one more point, I think. And my one point you can't touch upon.
I can't touch this.
No. It's about expansions. Yeah. So, my last point for the two games is, and I haven't played the newest expansion, Seven Wonders Duel, and I haven't played some of the expansion Seven Wonders, regular Seven Wonders. I haven't played Armada or whatnot.
But you've done Leaders and Pantheon,
I've done
right?
Leaders and Pantheon, which are the two first expansions for Seven Wonders. I've also played Cities once, I believe. But for those two expansions, these are just basic expansions of the game. Leaders is considered, I believe, an integral expansion to Seven Wonders, and I believe Pantheon is considered an integral expansion to Seven Wonders Duel. What I will say is my own personal note there is I consider Seven Wonders Leaders an integral expansion to Seven Wonders. I will play that with new players off the bat. I do not think it adds complexity to the game. I think it adds guidance and more powers and abilities. It kind of talks about, you mentioned the pre-game Wonder Draft. The Leaders does that for me on steroids. It gives you this element of drafting 4 leaders, choosing which one you're going to commit to each age, building a strategy before the game even began without being too complicated and too much extra rules to the game. It feels like a natural part of the game. I love Seven Wonders Leaders. It's excellent. Whereas with Seven Wonders Duel, I just find that Pantheon is almost forgettable is a little bit of a harsh word, but I found it didn't... now I said forgettable, sorry, I said the harsh word. I find Pantheon to me doesn't add the same level of necessity to the game. It felt okay. It adds a bunch of gods and a bunch of factors. You're going to be laying them out over in this board over here. And I only played it a few times, but I remember thinking that it was fine, and I don't mind it, but it didn't shift up the gameplay to the point that half time I'm playing Seven Wonders Duel, I have a choice of like refreshing myself on the rules or just playing Seven Wonders Duel.
Yeah.
And most time I just play Seven Wonders Duel.
That's
Going
fair.
back to even Board Game Arena.
What does Pantheon add?
It adds a bunch of gods. You're laying these god tiles, and then you can try to choose to gather their favor. Maybe we'll play it. Maybe we'll play after this. After this, ooh, we should do a gameplay Seven Wonders with Pantheon. We should do a gameplay.
Of Seven Wonders Duel?
Yeah, we should do it.
Sure.
After this, we'll play Seven Wonders Duel with Pantheon. At which point, at the end of that video, Devin will be like, this is the best expansion ever. I love it. I like Pantheon. I don't have anything against Pantheon. It doesn't have the same necessity to me as Seven Wonders Leaders. But yeah, on the flip side of that, if you want to take it as a pro in Seven Wonders Duel case, that means I think Seven Wonders Duel has a price point of $27.99, and I think Seven Wonders has a price point of like $68.
Yeah.
Once you factor it in. So there's a pro and a con depending on how you look at it. Because I think Seven Wonders Duel does an excellent job on its own.
Even more, 78.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's as far as what I have over here. Which I think brings us to the conclusion, the epic finale, the play this, not that of these two games. Where are you on these, Devin?
I know where you are, and I think you know where I am.
Actually, I don't know if you do know who I am.
Oh.
You know I am.
Yeah, I know where you are.
But barely. So, I'll dive into it. I think, and this goes back to the original point I mentioned in the beginning, ultimately these games have different player counts.
Yeah.
Which is a big factor here, because to me, I'm going to start off the bat, this is not a play this, not that, this is play both. They are both fantastic games. I think they're both incredible at what they do. I think Seven Wonders Duel is an epic fight to the death between two players that has a great degree of tension, a great degree of back and forth, a great degree of just pushing on people's buttons as you try to figure out how to achieve victory in the game. And I think Seven Wonders is both one of the best gateway games out there, plays in a short time frame, accommodates well player counts between 3 and 7. Anywhere between 3 and 7, it accommodates those player counts well, does a great job as far as just the general just accessibility of the gameplay experience, while giving you enough strategic choice, depth, and choices to be interesting. One of my favorite, best recommended gateway games of all time. So both of them, in terms of the category they're doing, despite having the same shared universe, I think they are fantastic. As far as which one I like more, I kind of choose. It's a very, very tough one. When I said you don't know exactly who I am, you don't know exactly who I am.
Is that why you said that?
I think Seven Wonders Duel has better, more strategic gameplay. So in terms of the pure gameplay aspect, I think Seven Wonders Duel has better, more strategic gameplay in terms of what the game is giving you. That head-to-headness just cannot be beat by what Seven Wonders is doing. But I think, to me, I have more games in that category. I think Seven Wonders, to me, just gives you an accessible game experience that is just so easy to table at a variety of player counts, that to me, if I had to pick one or the other, I would pick Seven Wonders over Seven Wonders Duel marginally. I think it accommodates more people. It hits that gateway category, especially if you add expansions. You can start really mixing it up to your gamer or game with Gateway Plus or any categories there. I think there's just a wider degree of variability and accessibility to what this experience offers, that if I had to pick or recommend just one, I would pick Seven Wonders. While saying that I think Seven Wonders Duel is arguably the better game.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So for me, my differences really center around player count and then how it feels. And so my thing I prefer is player interaction.
Okay.
And I feel that this is substantially more player interaction because every decision is affecting the every other player in the game, which just happens to be one. So because I'm able to affect every other player, I'm excited by every decision I make. Whereas in this game, I know that it might inconvenience the person to my left or person to my right, and I might make a choice that is not 100% optimal for me because it might give me some value and be a higher detriment to whoever I'm drafting towards. And then I really just feel that because of the player interaction at the two-player game, that this is where I typically land. And I really do enjoy the experience. I think that because it plays so fast, because it does play faster than Seven Wonders, and so I'm able to get in, 2-3 games in, especially on Board Game Arena, it plays even faster. But I'm able to play this more than this game because it plays faster, because it's only got 2 people involved, and I really do like some of the mechanics or strategy elements that we talked about, like the tug of war element with the military, the instant win conditions with both military and the science. So there are definitely elements of the gameplay that kick this up for me, and I really do prefer it. I don't dislike Seven Wonders. I feel that everything that Seven Wonders does, I like how it's re-implemented in Seven Wonders Duel. And also, it's a player count conversation for me. In a 2-player game, this is such an easy choice for me. It's such a fun game, and it plays quickly, and it's got a lot of depth to the decisions that you make. If I'm playing with 6 and 7 players, I want to play something lighter, like
Light and Some Wonders.
Yeah, just like that's a lot of people. I'd rather do something like previously we've talked about monikers, deception, stuff like that. Something that has I think typically like either a shorter time play or a like more lighter experience. And then if you're at 3, 4, and 5. Those are player counts that I'm very precious about my 3 and 4 and 5 player time. Like, because that is a harder player count for me to get to, because I'm either playing games with my wife or my sister or, like with you or something, that's easy for me to get a 2-player game in. If I'm having 6 or 7, that means I get to play some of the party-ish games that I don't always get to play. At 3, 4, and 5, I am very protective of a lot of titles in my collection that are much more dense than either of these two. And so if I have that amount of, players at the table, there are just other games that I want to play.
Yeah.
So Seven Wonders kind of falls into this camp where I would rather be playing something else despite the merits of the game. I think it's a great game. And I do agree with you that I think that just kind of like Prelude and drafting are a core experience for you when you play Terraforming Mars. When you introduced me to leaders, I was like, oh, this I do like this quite a bit more, because previous to that I had not played with leaders, and so I do think that it gives you a sense of like intent at the beginning of the game,
which I really enjoy.
Yeah, and I like that you kind of have a sense of purpose, and I feel that way with the drafting of the wonders here. So I like that leaders kind of reflects that experience when I'm playing with this, and. Yeah, I think it's more player count, and then also the where in the spectrum of player interaction this lands versus this. So I do say play this, and I think that probably Seven Wonders would work for a lot of people. So play this as well, but I don't because of
those restrictions. And I respect those restrictions. I think I agree with you completely that 3 and 4 players, I'm very precious on my player time. Where I potentially disagree is I think that for me, once you get to the 5+, there are already a small amount of games that I have to be selective about who's playing, what rules they know, and all that. Yeah. And I think even then, this does see play at 3 and 4 players, especially when I'm playing with people who want a lighter experience. Because the games that I'm precious about don't work well with people who are looking for a lighter experience who don't play a lot of games. So it depends on the crew, but I do find they both get a lot of table time from me. And with that, that is Play This, Not That, 7 Wonders versus 7 Wonders Duel. 2 different winners for different reasons. Ultimately, both great games. Well, it depends on who you just heard the final conclusion. The problem is I always want to give like the final conclusion.
And the final caveat.
The problem is the final caveat to me is like, let me just completely override everyone else in this video with my final opinion. No, that's good. You heard it all. You heard it all. That's Play This, Not That, 7 Wonders versus 7 Wonders Duel. I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co.
I'm Devin.
Have a good one.
See ya.